At just 21 years old, Zuzu Verk's life was tragically cut short under mysterious circumstances. A student at Sul Ross State University, she had a deep passion for the environment and wildlife. Adventurous by nature, she constantly sought new experiences and craved knowledge. But then came the day when her parents tried to reach her, without success. Zuzu's unexplained absence from a crucial exam raised serious concerns. The young woman's disappearance sent shockwaves through those who knew her. Had she fallen ill? Had something happened to her? Zuzu would never have gone missing without a word. The mystery surrounding her case only deepened as each new discovery heightened her family's fears. Born on April 22, 1995, in Keller, Texas, Zuzu was raised by her parents, Lori and Glenn Verk. Her brother, Miles, was always her close friend. He described her as a lively, kind-hearted person whose laughter was contagious to everyone around her. In every photo, she radiated a bright smile as if life had never given her a reason to be anything but joyful. Her name had a special origin. Her father named her after a character in the 1946 Christmas classic It's a Wonderful Life. The film held a sacred place in their family, and they had long agreed that if they ever had a daughter, she would bear that name. Years later, Lori found out she was expecting, and in 1995, their family was blessed with a baby girl carrying that unique name. After graduating from Timber Creek High School, Zuzu chose to further her studies at Sul Ross State University in Alpine, Texas. The small town was known for its breathtaking natural scenery, and its starry skies were considered among the most stunning in the state. Zuzu was drawn to such places, and the prospect of living in this picturesque setting thrilled her. She majored in environmental science, excelling in her studies. Eventually, she applied to transfer to Texas A&M University, eager to take her academic career to the next level. Her love for nature was more than just a hobby, it was a calling. She didn't just admire the wonders of the natural world, she dreamed of becoming their protector. Zuzu was incredibly determined. Once she set a goal, she pursued it with unwavering dedication. This strong-willed nature attracted people to her, and soon, Robert Fabian entered her life. Robert was 4 years older, socially active, and had a natural charm that created a fun, laid-back atmosphere wherever he went. He had an effortless confidence that caught Zuzu's attention. According to her brother, Miles, Robert was captivated by Zuzu, and she found him intriguing. However, her mother, Lori, was wary of him from the start. To her, Robert seemed narcissistic, self-centered, and too loud. But Zuzu was an adult, and her parents couldn't dictate whom she chose to be with. Still, one thing was clear to Lori: Robert didn't treat her daughter with the love and care she deserved. Miles, too, had his doubts about Robert. He felt that Robert was manipulating his sister, trying to keep her in Alpine while she was waiting for her transfer approval from Texas A&M. Zuzu also had plans to travel abroad after finishing university. Traveling was one of her greatest passions. She had long dreamed of visiting Japan, but Robert didn't share her enthusiasm. He didn't want to lose her, but he also didn't want to support her ambitions. Their relationship was unstable, conflicts alternated with reconciliations. They constantly struggled to understand each other. Zuzu confided in her mother that she couldn't see a future with Robert. From the beginning, she had known their relationship wasn't meant to last. To her, it was simply a convenient romance, one that would eventually come to an end. What she never expected was that this relationship would prove fatal. Lori last spoke to her daughter on October 10, 2016. They chatted about everyday things, and Zuzu mentioned that she was finally ready to tell Robert about her transfer to Texas A&M. This, in essence, meant the end of their relationship. She also mentioned that Robert had planned a movie night for them on October 11th. Days passed without a single response to calls or messages. This was completely out of character for Zuzu. No matter how busy she was with school, she always made time to check in with her parents. Lori kept sending her messages, hoping for any kind of reply. Desperate, she finally wrote, "Please, just tell us that you're alive." She tried reaching out to Robert, but he claimed he hadn't seen Zuzu that day and had simply given her space. A few days later, he contacted the police, asking them to check on her. On October 14, Zuzu was officially declared missing. Law enforcement immediately focused their attention on Robert, as he was the last known person to have been with her. During questioning, he stated that on the night of October 11, they had a romantic dinner at his place. Everything was going well until he accidentally mentioned his ex-girlfriend. Allegedly, this upset Zuzu, and she left around 2 or 3 a.m. He claimed he had called her afterward but, when she didn't respond, decided not to bother her. The search for Zuzu became a massive operation. Hundreds of miles of land were searched on foot, on horseback, and from the air. Hours were spent reviewing security footage, but no significant leads were found. The town was plastered with missing person flyers featuring her face, and a $100,000 reward was offered for any information. However, soon, investigators identified their first suspect. The investigation unfolds: the disappearance of Zuzu Verk. During the investigation, various testimonies emerged, but one detail stood out in particular. When detectives interviewed Robert's neighbors, his downstairs neighbor, John Franco, shared some unsettling observations. John confirmed that he had seen Zuzu arrive in her car and enter Robert's apartment. He heard laughter, conversations, and the sounds of kitchen utensils. Clearly, the couple was preparing dinner. But then, something unusual happened. A sharp voice shouted, "Shut up," followed by complete silence. Later, deep into the night, John noticed Robert leaving the apartment alone at 4 a.m., while Zuzu's car remained parked outside. He had also heard an argument and strange noises coming from above, but at the time, he didn't think much of it. When investigators questioned Robert again, his version of events changed. He now claimed that after an argument, he had gone out to get some air and visited a Dairy Queen. When he returned home, he found Zuzu still in his apartment, but according to him, she left shortly after. The police immediately doubted Robert's honesty. They insisted on searching his apartment. Inside, they found a mattress, clothing, and bedding that had been treated with bleach. The apartment itself looked off. His bed was stripped of sheets and even pillowcases, which raised suspicions. Additionally, Robert began speaking about Zuzu in the past tense, which only deepened the investigators' concerns. At this point, he became the prime suspect, and detectives feared that Zuzu's disappearance might have taken a far more sinister turn. A second suspect emerges. However, there was another person who might have been involved: Robert's closest friend, Chris Estrada. His name surfaced during an interview he gave to Crime Watch Daily on December 6, 2016. In the footage, his behavior appeared unnatural and strange. He smiled inappropriately, his movements were sharp and jittery. Investigators also found it suspicious that Robert had called Chris at 3:15 a.m. on October 12. During questioning, Chris revealed that on the night before, Robert had asked to borrow his credit card, claiming he had left his own at home. After receiving the card, Robert went to a store where he purchased plastic drop cloths. He told Chris that he needed them because he was painting a table. The entire scenario raised serious red flags. Why would Robert suddenly feel the urge to paint furniture in the middle of the night? And why was Chris so willing to help with such an illogical request? Law enforcement remained highly skeptical of their story. Later, a woman named Brittany, another acquaintance of Robert's, came forward. She testified that on the night of October 13, at approximately midnight, Chris had shown up at her place in an extremely distressed state, as if he had witnessed something horrifying. When she asked him what was wrong, he only replied with a plea: "Don't get involved." A break in the case. Despite the growing number of suspicious testimonies, the case lacked hard evidence. Robert remained the primary suspect, but there simply wasn't enough proof to charge him, and Chris continued insisting that the plastic sheets were for painting. Meanwhile, Zuzu's family refused to give up. They held press conferences, distributed information about her disappearance, and pleaded with Robert to cooperate. But as time passed, answers never came. Then, 3 months later, when all hope of finding Zuzu alive had nearly faded, the case took a shocking turn. On February 3, 2017, a patrol officer named Jarrett Maynard discovered anomalous soil in a remote ravine in Brewster County. Upon closer inspection, he noticed a disturbed patch of earth nearby. Lying close to it were a fragment of plastic, a single blue sock, and a piece of black fabric. Investigators arrived at the scene and began digging. What they found confirmed their worst fears: a body wrapped in plastic sheeting. Forensic analysis later identified the remains as those of 21-year-old Zuzu Verk. She had disappeared months earlier and was now found in a desolate area far from town. Her family was devastated. They had lost their daughter, sister, and a young woman who had dreams of traveling the world and building a future. The evidence seals their fate. Now, police had physical evidence. The plastic sheeting wrapped around Zuzu's body was identical to the one Robert had purchased. Investigators had no doubt. Robert hadn't just taken Zuzu's life, he had also tried to cover up every trace of his crime, likely with Chris's help. Just one day after Zuzu's remains were discovered, Robert was arrested and charged with tampering with evidence and moving a body. Within 48 hours, Chris was also arrested in Arizona, facing similar charges. Eventually, Robert was indicted on more severe charges, bringing the case one step closer to justice. In April 2018, Chris pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against Robert, who continued to deny any involvement. During the trial, Robert's defense emphasized the unfairness of the charges, arguing that there were no fingerprints or DNA evidence linking him to the scene where Zuzu's body was found. Robert insisted that his conflict with Zuzu never escalated beyond a verbal argument. A colleague of Robert also testified at the trial. She noted that his usually calm demeanor drastically changed after Zuzu's disappearance. Throughout the investigation, Robert closely followed the detectives' progress, as if trying to assess how much evidence they had gathered. On the third day of the trial, Chris took the stand. He revealed that on the night of Zuzu's disappearance, Robert had called him, describing an urgent, life-or-death situation. Robert admitted that during dinner with Zuzu, a peaceful conversation had turned into a heated argument, leading to a loss of control. The conflict became physical, and Robert had wrapped his hands around her neck. Zuzu struggled to breathe but, within moments, stopped showing signs of life. According to Chris, Robert panicked and tried to resuscitate her, performing CPR, but it was already too late. Realizing the severity of the situation, Robert began planning how to cover his tracks. Law enforcement interpreted his actions as an attempt to stage the event as an accident. However, such circumstances could not have been coincidental. Zuzu was a healthy young woman, and this situation could not have occurred by chance. After the incident, Robert repeatedly contacted Chris, asking for help in disposing of the body. Later, he even visited Chris's home in person, urging him not to go to the police. While Chris was not directly involved in the crime, he failed to report what he knew to law enforcement. This delayed the investigation and prolonged the uncertainty for Zuzu's family. Throughout this time, Chris witnessed the suffering of Zuzu's parents but was too afraid to betray his friend. Later in court, an unexpected witness came forward. An inmate, Roy Roman, who had been in the same penitentiary facility as Robert, testified that Robert had confessed to the crime. According to Roy, Zuzu had discovered Robert's secret romantic relationship with another man and had planned to expose the truth. Fearing the consequences, Robert saw eliminating Zuzu as his only option. Robert maintained that he had never intended to harm her, but his arguments failed to convince the jury. On May 8, 2019, after 5 hours of deliberation, the court delivered its verdict. Robert was found guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison, with an additional 29 years for attempting to cover up the evidence. Chris received 42 months in prison and a fine for aiding in concealing the crime. Zuzu's family experienced a mix of relief and pain. On one hand, justice had been served, but it could never bring their daughter back. They later received a letter from Texas A&M University confirming Zuzu's acceptance. Her dream had come true, but she would never know. In her memory, Sul Ross State University named an amphitheater after her and established a scholarship in natural resource conservation. Zuzu had dreamed of traveling the world and building a career, but one fateful encounter changed everything. Her family continues to live with the painful reality that the person they had expected to love and support her was the very one who took her life. Thank you for watching this story. Write your thoughts about it in the comments. Don't miss the future videos, subscribe and like the channel. Take care of yourself and people you love.